And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
Yeah, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Dom Gocher.
how well did that go down?
We can talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at PreneurMedia.tv.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's PreneurCast with me, Dom, and him, Pete.
Hey buddy, how's things?
Good. I'm glad to be all back home, as I'm sure you are.
I am. This is the first episode we're going to be recording from my new home office.
Ooh.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And also it's kind of the first episode back together. It seems strange to have not kind of been chatting with you on the episodes for the last couple of weeks.
It's very strange because I've spent more time with you in the last month than we have for quite a while, being in Florida together for the Profit Hacks launch. Yet we haven't actually spoken in terms of a podcast, which is kind of very ironic and weird.
Yeah. So I'm glad to be back on form with that one. Although I have to say, you know, I don't mind being deposed by people like Robert Greene and Tim Ferriss. You know, if you're going to get pushed out, you may as well get pushed out by somebody that's, you know, a bit of a name there. And kudos to you for getting those people kind of having those conversations. They were. If anyone hasn't listened yet, please do go back either on iTunes, on your subscription, or on PreneurMedia.tv and go and have a listen to Pete's conversations with Robert Greene and Tim Ferriss. They're above and beyond the normal kind of go buy my thing, whatever I'm promoting this month kind of thing that you might have come across. Because Pete has a bit of a way about him of asking some, you know, pretty deep questions and pretty interesting questions to get more information out of these people than just what's in your new book. So no, credit where credit's due, Pete. I've got to say that. But something that I picked up from those conversations. And something I wanted to ask you about, which I think is a good start back to our kind of partnership in conversation again, is that both, you know, Robert Greene's new book Mastery and Tim Ferriss's book The 4-Hour Chef, that if you haven't read it, by the way, isn't anything about being a chef. They both make a really, really powerful point because they're both talking about expertise. And part of their route to expertise and mastery of things is a mentorship, some kind of apprenticeship or mentoring with somebody. And as well as those two books, I've been rereading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and in there he's big on experience, upon also building a mastermind group or a peer group or some kind of mentoring relationship with people. And he's always talking about looking for people with skills you don't have, people with a higher amount of knowledge than you. Now, what struck me is something that I had an issue with time and time again years ago, and something that you have clearly overcome in the fact that you are now talking to people like Robert Greene and Tim Ferriss, and that is, how on earth do you approach these people for just even answering one of your questions, let alone being a mentor, having more of a conversation with you? Because the idea of talking to somebody above your station, whether it's approaching a speaker at an event that you're at, or whether it's approaching just a name in your industry, or just somebody higher up the organization than you, can be quite daunting for people. So, Pete, I wonder if you got some feedback on that, because I certainly, you know, as always, I'll be taking notes on this, even though I do have you to speak to.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said about finding mentors and things like that, and I think for the context of this conversation too, I think it's important to kind of stress the point that a mentor-mentee type relationship, you know, obviously in the general context of the word, can be over weeks or months or years. So it's obviously generally, you know, you have that mentor who's sort of that advisor for a period of time. But I think everything we're going to talk about in today's episode specifically is definitely applicable, if not more so, to people who just want to pick a mentor's brain for a small piece of advice. I get emails, pretty much every single day, and got truckloads in the last couple of weeks since obviously the exposure of Preneur and what we do here, and myself obviously off the back of the Profit Hacks launch. We had 10,000 people register for the live stream we did during that promotion, which was insane. So obviously there's a lot more people now approaching me for a piece of my time, for some free advice, or sort of getting over a friction point and things like that, which is great. I really enjoy people reaching out and asking questions, but obviously I only have a finite amount of time available. I've got a baby on the way, I've got the telco, and I've got the finger food company I'm involved with, and we've got the e-commerce sites, and now obviously in the retail outdoor space we're doing stuff there. So my time is very, very valuable to me, and obviously with all the Preneur stuff we do. So it makes it hard for me to actually answer everyone's question. And I think if people approached not only myself, but other people they're trying to get advice from, or obviously if they're trying to find a mentor on an ongoing basis in a non-financial relationship perspective, some of the stuff we're going to talk about is really important. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a great place to start, because if you were to just flat out go to somebody and say, "Oh, mentor me," a mentorship is really a relationship. That's how it's talked about in the various things that I've just made reference to. It's an ongoing relationship. It doesn't have to be a full-time thing, as you said. It can be, a bit here, a bit there, but it's still a relationship, and it's something that you really want to kind of grow into. So starting with a question, not only from the idea of making sure it's the right relationship for you, but also it's an easy step. Asking somebody a question, getting an answer from them, a helpful answer for you and your business or yourself, your own personal progress, I think is a great start. So if you could start there, because I've seen it as well. As you say,
you get questions as well now, off your presence and exposure
well, this
through
is
this
it.
and things like. You get a lot of technical, mechanical type questions that in the same sort of context.
That's it. I was about to say exactly that. But I've seen a growth in questions both directly to you through the Profit Hacks community that we've built up since the recent launch, but also things like your Facebook page and things like that. You get a lot of questions, not just direct email ones, but through all these routes. And I'm starting to get more and more as well. And I've got things to do. I can't say I have the things to do that you have to do, but nonetheless, my time is valuable to me as well. So, what have you got for people to be able to help them to reach out and ask that first question?
Yeah, well, I think you touched on a word that's really important. That is your time is valuable, the valuable word. And I think, that's why I, obviously offer my time in a consulting perspective. If someone wants a decent chunk of my time, they can obviously invest in some consulting with me, and I make myself available between my other projects and things like that. And we have certain avenues where we make ourselves available, and most mentors do have that ability to do the formal financial consulting sort of stuff, which is great. And I think if you can go down that path, that is definitely the best path to go, because you have a lot more control over the situation as the mentee, in that you pay for that time, you can control that. Whereas if you're asking for free advice and free time, obviously the economics of that transaction and that mentoring is obviously a bit different, because it's very much skewed towards the mentor giving up his valuable time. And obviously if you're going to someone for their advice, obviously you're wanting their advice because of their experience, their expertise in what they're doing. So obviously their time is extremely valuable, otherwise you wouldn't be asking them for advice. So you have to understand, obviously they're giving something up to give to you advice and give you some of their time. They're actually giving up an opportunity cost, and that is something that a lot of people don't really consider. They think that because someone's successful in any area, no matter what it is, that they now have all this freedom and flexibility to be able to give back and give advice, which is true to a certain extent, but there's still an opportunity cost there for people. And that's obviously why majority of consulting sort of sessions are financially remunerated. But I understand for so many people out there, when you're starting out, whether you're young or you've got a full-time job or your business is just its infancy, you don't have that free cash flow to actually obviously approach the mentors and do that, which is understandable. So how do you go about this? How do you actually show you care, show you appreciate and value their time, and still get what you require out of it in terms of some advice and some mentoring? Well, obviously, the general approach people take is the ego approach, in that you'll sort of, see an email come through, or you might have written an email yourself saying, "Hi, Michael Jordan, I really love your stuff. Congratulations on all your championship rings. Can you just give me some advice on how to shoot a 3-throw?" And, that's okay, really. Is buttering up and playing to his ego that you love him really going to actually, get him to respond? I think, his ego is big enough, his bank balance is big enough, he has enough other people around him, even paying for his time, telling him that he's awesome. So why is the ego play, is that really a good economical transaction there? And realistically, when you look at it and take a step back, you'd obviously agree that it's not. Yet so many people, that is the only card they seem to feel like they have up their sleeve that they can play. So they go for the ego. "I really love your stuff, you're awesome. I'd buy your stuff if I had the money, but I don't, so can you give me your time for free?" And that's a very poor starting point to come from. Particularly for your entrepreneurial space, because you're showing that you're not really entrepreneurial and creative of ways to make deals. So obviously that's a very big red herring or red flag kind of thing. Is that kind of making sense so far, Dom?
Yeah, I like that point. I mean, that was what was kind of creeping into the back of my mind. That if it's in the entrepreneurial space, I'll come back to that point. But the first point is, if you approach somebody with an ego stroke, as we call it, in whatever way you want, you basically say, "You're awesome." These people are going to hear that. They're gonna hear it, and it's going to get filed with everything else. You're not going to stand out as somebody that's possibly even worthwhile responding to, however much that person might want to, because everyone's time is valuable to them. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be an owner of 5 real world businesses plus like yourself. You could be a relatively ordinary guy like me, but what I do with my time is important to me, whether I apply it to my business or whether I apply it to my family. I've decided what I was doing with that time. And so it's kind of, with the best will in the world, unless I've allocated time to respond to people, it's an interruption to me to respond to an unexpected inquiry, which is one of the other reasons why, both you and I do these kind of coaching arrangements, the paid arrangement. One of the reasons we do that is because we allocate that time. We've made that transaction in our minds, and we've allocated the time on a weekly basis to make sure we're available to those people and that they get the best of our response. But the thing that was interesting to me was that entrepreneurial point that you made, which is if as a free thinking, forward-thinking, dynamic entrepreneurial type who's really wanting to move up in the world, the best you can do is come up with "you're awesome," then it's not a great reflection on your entrepreneurial abilities, is it?
No, exactly right.
So what can people do?
Well, I think that the thing people have to realise is that I kind of alluded to it earlier. There is a transaction taking place. It is a transaction when someone gives up their time for you. That is a transaction. In the general sense of economics, it's not a financial transaction, but it's still an economical transaction. And you have to think about this. In any other transaction, if you go to a local strip mall and you go into the store and you want to purchase something, how does the transaction go? You find out what you want, you go up to the counter, you give them your money first, and then in exchange, they give you what you want back in exchange for that. So you give money first and you get afterwards. So most transactions, when you're the person who has the wanting, you have to transact first. So, okay, in a advising, mentoring type position, you might have the cash to buy coaching, and that's what this conversation's all about. So how do you go about giving first before you get? Because it's still a transaction. And hopefully people's light bulbs have just gone on really quickly then saying, okay, there's a transaction here. I have to give before I get. And it doesn't have to be money. So there's 3 or 4 things that you can actually give and offer value in this transaction to actually get the mentoring advice back, rather than just doing a pitch of ego. So the first thing I really suggest people think of is their skill set. Value your skill set and offer your skill set. For example, if there's a mentor you want to work with and you've got some experience in, let's say hypothetically, local business marketing. So you're an internet marketer whose service or the business you're trying to grow is in local marketing, so doing Google Map listings or AdWord campaigns or bit of article marketing, or maybe you're a musician and you enjoy playing guitar, or whatever it might be. You obviously have some skills. You have a trade. No matter what you've done, you have a passion, you have a hobby, you have some skills in that area, you have a vocation, you have skills in that area. How can you actually package that up and offer that to the mentor first in exchange for his time and his advice? So, for example, you could go to the mentor and say, hey, I was looking at one of your business's websites and I noticed you don't have a Google listing, or there's some things missing on your Google listing. Can I actually help you out completely free? No expectations right now. Just want to help you out because I really love the free content you give out. That could be one example. Maybe you've read a blog post where they've talked about wanting to learn to play the guitar. Hey, I noticed you want to play you're wanting to learn to play the guitar. I've actually been playing in a band for 6 years. If you ever want to jam on a Sunday afternoon, I'll bring around a 6-pack and I'll show you how to play a couple of chords. So you're actually offering value first, and you're not doing it in a cheese and whiskers way where you're sort of saying, hey, I want your time for free. Will you exchange it for guitar lessons? Because anybody worth their salt that you're going after, if they really wanted that transaction, they would just go and spend their money on the guitar lessons. So you have to do it in a, hopefully I get this word right, altruistic manner. Hope I pronounced that right.
I'll let you off. It's we English people would say altruistic.
Altruistic,
but yeah.
There you go. Terrible. So if anyone has English lessons, let me know. But like that, so you're actually going and giving your skill first, and you're actually offering that skill, and you build the relationship up off the back of that skill. And after you've given, then you receive. And you've got to think of this in more than a transactional fact. And this is the problem I see with a lot of people, whether they're trying to start an internet business or any sort of businesses to make money. We'll leave that for another episode. It's all about the transaction today. It's not about the mid or long-term output. So if you go to someone and say, here's a question, give me an answer, the person's going to give you an answer and sort of go, yeah, go away because I've got no value out of this. But if you give to them first, they're going to feel in debt. It's the influence factor that Cialdini talks about in the book Influence. And we've spoken about that sort of stuff on this show so often. It's the reciprocity.
Yeah.
Play to that reciprocity, influence and persuasion factor. So that's sort of the very first thing is literally take a moment right now, get a pen and paper, and just list down what assets you have as a person. What are the skills and assets you have? Whether you're going to actually use this today, tomorrow, next week, is just you need to have that arsenal either handy on a pad of paper or at least verbalized internally by sitting down and writing out what your asset skill list actually is.
That's a good tip. I mean, it is interesting that there's two things there. One that I'm going to push to another episode because it is a huge topic, and the other one I think is worth talking about now. And the one that's worth kind of investigating more deeply in another episode is this this now economy. This everything has to happen now. So you want your answer now. So you ask your question now, rather than a little bit of forethought and planning and leading up to things, which usually leads to much better. Well, everything really. But the point that's relevant here to this conversation is that whole idea of valuing yourself. Everybody, as you say, has something of value. They may not see it, but it's there, and I think it's more difficult for people who are kind of talking to people in exactly the same business or exactly the same industry, just looking at somebody slightly more successful. But even there, there are a million little things, both business and personal, that we all need to get done. We're all human. Even someone such as yourself has things you want to get done. Things that maybe projects that are just getting started, or things that you're interested in but don't want to allocate your own resources to right now, etc., etc. If someone wants to come to you and say, hey, I've noticed this about that. I'm happy to fill in that gap for you. Well, if you don't have to allocate a resource to it, this person's volunteering to help you out, you're going to take them up on it. Whether it's designing a new logo, laying out an ebook, submitting something to a service, whatever it might be, literally everybody has got a value that they can offer. And even to somebody somewhere.
And even if you've hypothetically got a rubbish removal business and you actually already have a real world business, why don't you bank up this IOU bank and say to people that you follow, that you admire, that you learn from, hey, I've got a rubbish removal business. If you ever need some stuff removed, hit me up. I'd love to help you out and say thanks for the free stuff you give away. Or you hear they're moving house. It's like, hey, I heard you're moving house. I offer a rubbish removal service. If you want my services, I'll give it to you for free. No questions asked because I just like what you do. Whatever it might be. And just actually have that bank of IOUs you can call on later. So no matter where you have it, doesn't have to be your own personal skill set. It can be of an asset you actually have, for example. So that's sort of the first thing I think.
Before you jump on, I want to just pick up on something that you said there, because there is a really interesting way to approach that offer that you just made. And you made it in an offhand way, but I want to pick up on it because I think it might help people. And that is that instead of just coming out of the blue and saying, here, I can do this, what you said there was that let's just say, for example, let's put it into some concrete form. Let's say that it was a listener to the PreneurCast wanting to offer something to you to start building that bank up of IOUs. If they were to approach you and say, I have this thing, I can do this thing, I have this asset, whatever, and just go, here, catch, it would sound a little bit incongruous. But if they were to actually say, look, I'll listen to all 80-odd episodes of PreneurCast. I've got an amazing amount of value from it. And to say thank you, I want to offer something back. I don't have much, but I have this. I have this service. I have whatever. So please, if I can help you in return for the help you've given me. So it's not the same as an ego stroke. It's a thank you. It's a genuine thank you that somebody's got value from the free material that you and I put out there every week in our PreneurCast. And they're recognizing it, which is very different from an ego stroke. They're recognizing and saying thank you, and they're offering something of theirs as a token, as a way to say thank you. And I think that's a very clean way to approach that. So I think you kind of you slid it along there, but I just wanted to pick up on it so that because it might help some people.
Yeah, and this is clearly not a call out for people. My email box.
Oh yeah, sorry, no.
But this is just we're just using us as obviously the context here. So the second thing, so the first thing there is offering skills you already have. Another thing you can actually offer is your advice, which is different to skill, but is almost a substitute for skill. So let's say, for example, you have listened to this show for a while and you're now understanding some core marketing concepts. You understand some seven levers things. You maybe understand the Preneur hierarchy framework. You understand direct response. Whatever sort of skills you developed hypothetically from listening to our show, or reading a series of books, or buying a training course, whatever it might be, you might now have an education about marketing. And this is sort of a conversation a lot of people have in their own minds is, oh, this idea, this concept, this tactic, this strategy would work really, really well. But unfortunately, I'm not Tim Ferriss and I don't have the pool or the database to make it happen. Or I'm not Mark Cuban. I can't go and implement this, unfortunately, right now. It'd be really cool for him if he could do it, but I'm not him, so it won't work for me. Well, why don't you actually take that idea and offer it to that person, that potential mentor you want to work with. Say, hey, I had this really cool idea. I'm not there yet in my business, but I can see it fitting really, really well with your business. Here it is. If you're interested, I can help project manage it for you. So you don't have to have the skills of implementation. You just give them the idea and the actual project management skills. I've seen this worked exceptionally well for people sort of who wanted to learn from various people. I know I'm almost positive this is, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure this is the story of how Charlie Hohen started working with Tim Ferriss. Charlie has written a great ebook called Recession Proof Graduate and has worked with Tim on a number of his books now. And he actually saw some stuff with Tim early on and said, hey Tim, I think you should really be doing this in your marketing. If you want me to coordinate it for you, I can make it happen. And this is why it's not working for you. And this is the benefit you actually get. Can I implement this split test for you? Fundamentally, now, that's not exactly how it happened, but hopefully it gives the context enough for people. And of course, Tim's going to go, well, why would I not say yes to someone else implementing a split test that makes perfect sense of actually helping me grow my business and my bottom line? So, the person doesn't have to actually go and do the task, just offer the idea. And this is a conversation people are having in their head every single day. It's like, this would be really cool if. this would be awesome if you've ever had an idea or a thought, and every time you do from now on, think, that'd be really cool if I was this person. That'd be awesome if I had this sort of resource. Well, find the person who has that and offer it for free. That's the way you actually, cold approach for an apprenticeship. That person's going to show and see that you are hugely resourceful, very entrepreneurial, willing to do what it takes. And obviously that reciprocity there is going to be huge for you when they're going to give you advice. They're going to support you on the back of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen lots of examples of that, and a mixture of the two, where people have say, got some skill in something. If you were somebody starting out, say, in my industry, for example, and you had the equipment or the skill and the knowledge to be able to film a live event, offering to film that live event is a huge weight off of an organizer's shoulders, especially if they're not already planning to film it. That's a massive thing. That's kind of a tangible example, but this idea of offering the advice, going to somebody and saying, not only I can tell you what to do, but I'll kind of help you run it, makes a big difference, because it really is taking that weight off their shoulders. You're giving them something literally for free, because they don't even have to allocate resource or thought time to it. They just look at it and go, yeah, that'd be a really good idea, and somebody else is going to do it for me. Sure, I'm going to go ahead. And the side benefit of that, by the way, it's kind of connected to a PreneurCast we did on doing joint ventures. Is that by working with that person and associating yourself with them, if the project becomes known to people, you become associated with that person, you become associated with that success of that project and that technique, and you can go from there. It may be the thing you need to boost your business alone without their actual input or advice, but by helping them out and offering to help them out, you're also building that relationship with that person for a potential mentorship in the future. So that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and I think this is something people should do as well. If you've got that dream wish list of people to have dinner with or have a beer with or want to learn from, write that out, post it on a desk or on a wall next to your desk. And then every time you're learning and educating, not only think about how you could apply this in your business today and tomorrow, but think about if you were that person. How would you actually apply that in their shoes? Because not only would it actually help you think grander, think bigger, and obviously get more value out of the content, because you're seeing and thinking how you could apply that in various formats, you now have an idea that you can take and run with and offer to that person. And it doesn't have to be a business relationship stuff, it's just here's an idea and have it. Because that's something very, very key. So that's the second thing. The third thing is just offer your time and be just blatant about it and say, hi, Mr. Guru, Mr. Advisor, I really like your stuff. I really want to learn from you, but I don't have money and I don't have a lot of skills yet, but I have time. I have 3 hours a week on Thursday nights, which I'd love to give to you, doing whatever you want to start with. If you're simply proofreading your articles and your blog posts before they go out, that'd be great. Maybe you have a blog that you love and I can be articulate. I'll turn that blog posts into a podcast every single week. I will just voice your blog post and turn it into an audio for you at no charge. I just want to work with you. I want to give value first, so I understand how the relationship should have to work, and hopefully you accept my offer of free time. And just give your time to them, and you'll build up a relationship, and in turn you will get so much value back. If their integrity is right and they're the right type of person you want to mentor under, then that sort of thing, just give your time and be open and honest and transparent. You don't have to actually go in there and blow your own tyres up bigger than they are. You're better off going in there and being underselling yourself and then overperforming after the fact.
That's it. It's all about, I guess, as we say over here, getting your foot in the door one way or another, getting in front of that person and letting them know that you have some value, so it's worth their while spending time with you, helping you in return if you ever need it. And it's a huge contrast, I think, just to pull back to that point of the economic exchange. That so many people go in there with just a nothing, long time listener type approach. Oh, you're awesome, kind of thing. And then, hey, can you answer my question? And sometimes these questions can get quite long and involved as well. Just reading it might take 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah. and there's no real understanding of the kind of necessary value exchange. So it is still about this idea of all the things that you said really do roll up. Think about who you would want to approach. Think about the value you can offer to them. Think about how where they might use the thing that you have, even if it is your time, and go in with that. Go in again with the approach of either, hey, I get a lot of value from you already. Can I give you some value back? Or just as you said just then, look, I understand that your time is valuable. So, I want to make sure that you realize that I appreciate that as an exchange of value. So I want to give you some value up front. Be as straight as you want. But all these things are just ways of getting these people to be aware of you, and to not ignore you, because they see that you appreciate the value exchange, and they see some value in potentially working with you.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think there's still one final way to actually approach first in this sort of economic exchange of mentorship and mentoring, and that is being a connector. And this is sort of a little bit sort of new age, sort of a lot of people talking about this as a way to sort of build up a network and things these days, is you actually be a connector. You cold connect people, and what that means is, hypothetically, Seth Godin and you think that Mark Cuban should know Seth Godin. You just do an email to both parties cold and say, hey guys, I really think you should connect. I love both your work. This is the stuff I see you guys being overlapping on thoughts and processes on. Hope you guys can make some magic together. I love you both. Enjoy. And I think that can work in certain circumstances. I think you need to have a strong relationship, at least with one of those parties, to make that work. Definitely. And I think it's worth trying, but I do think that is really the last avenue prior to begging for their time for free and blowing at the Tigers and going that ego pitch.
One thing I would say to that, the connecting somebody with somebody else that they see to be of value is a value exchange, definitely. But one thing I would say, and it's a thing that on a slightly lower level that I have a preference for. If you know one of these people better than the other, and this can work just for general business referrals, regardless. One of the things that I like to do is, if I'm going to refer somebody to somebody, or connect them, as you said it, I would approach the person I know best first and say, hey, would you mind?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Because otherwise your inbox, suddenly you wake up one morning and your inbox has this kind of awkward introduction in it that's like, hey, Dom, you should know this guy, and this guy, you should know Dom. Bye.
Yeah, that is true.
And you kind of left there with this email going, okay, now I really have to respond to that, and I'm a bit busy right now, and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with it.
I think you got to give a suggestion, an obvious one for us, and I'm going to use us as an example again, purely because obviously it's the world we know the best, is hypothetically you want to connect with me, and you know someone who would make an awesome guest for our show. Mm-hmm. That's a perfect connection. Hey guys, you can email us at the support email address, say, hey guys, I really love your show. I've been listening for a while. I'm really good friends with, or I've had business connections with, person ABC, who I think can make a great guest on the show because of these 3 quick reasons. Hope you guys connect. Hope you guys make it on the show because I know it'd be great. Bill. And obviously, if we feel there's a connection, we're going to reach back out to Bill and say thanks for the show, suggestion, keep in touch. What did you do? Find out more about Bill. Conversation starts. He can ask for some advice. Now again, this isn't a cold pitch to get guests because we have them lined up. But if you have someone awesome, we won't say no to the email. But that's the kind of thing you have to look at, is how can this other person support the person you want to connect with? How can you actually make their life easier through a connection? So rather than your own time, how do you literally give someone else's time away that makes you look good? So if you can't give away your own time in skill, advice, or just blatant time, pimp someone else out. Get someone else to give their time up that's mutually beneficial for them and for the person you're approaching, and you get those kudos and you get that connection and that door opened without doing any actual investment of major time yourself, but it's still part of the value exchange. It still adds up to this economics of mentoring that we're talking about here. There's still value exchanged.
Absolutely, and in a way, this is a kind of a mixture of that offering advice point that you made earlier, because you're kind of approaching somebody and saying, okay, I know this person, or I'm aware of this person in this space, and I'm aware of you and what you do, and if you were to talk to this person about this thing, I think it would add value to you or add value to your business or whatever. And so you're kind of and you're giving them the idea, just as we talked about in offering advice. You're giving them the idea, and you're offering to facilitate it if you can by connecting those two people. And again, a lot of people are going to see a lot of value in that. For example, if somebody were to come to us, somebody would come to anybody with any kind of podcast or media outlet and offer a valuable guest with some valuable insight in a particular marketplace, then you're going to be appreciative of it. Yes, we personally, we have guests lined up, and people approach us, all the time now to be on the show. But if somebody came up with a really great idea for a guest, a really great idea for a slot, we're not going to turn it down. We'll put it into our publishing calendar and try and fit that in, and it's going to be valuable to us. It's going to be valuable to anybody. So that's a great way of again approaching somebody and adding value. And in that case, it's not even you that has the direct value. The value you're bringing there is the connection, being the connector, as you said.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, I think that's kind of hitting the time limit for our show. I reckon we've given away 4 really good avenues people can use, they can swipe and deploy in their lives, in their businesses, in their journey right now to actually get a much higher response rate and conversion rate, essentially what it is, for your cold approaches for advice. You actually have to give first, show some value, and then you can obviously, on the back of that, have that relationship which person will obviously give their advice to their friends, connectors, and people who have obviously helped them out. So that's hopefully 4 things: skill, advice, time, and connection that people can give away.
Awesome. And yeah, I think that was pretty valuable. I think it would help a lot of people to overcome this idea that either they can't approach people because the distance between them is too great, or that they don't have, if they're already aware that it's a value exchange, they may think that they don't have that value to offer. So I think, we've given 4 different but also overlapping and connected ways that you can both approach somebody and, as you say, kind of improve your conversion, because we love conversion here at PreneurCast.
Exactly.
Great one, mate. Great one. We're close to time, so it says it's time to say thanks everybody for listening. As always, do check out those recent conversations between Pete and Robert Greene and Tim Ferriss, because there's a lot of value in there for everybody and a lot of things to kind of pick up from 2 very well known figures in the marketplace. Please, as always, feedback on iTunes in your country, or visit PreneurMedia.tv for all the back episodes and the transcripts and all the show notes. And look forward to speaking to you soon.
See you next week, guys.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Gosher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at PreneurMedia.tv or drop them a line via PreneurCast@PreneurGroup.com.